Anything else you want to say to your fans, man?
Man, shout out to Dante's Boxing Nation. You know, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, Errol Spence Jr., my whole name, and just look out for me.
Yes, sir.
There's a man standing here to our right, former two-division champion, Danny Garcia in the house.
But he's the top dog, and I want the top spot. So I'm here to tell Errol Spence, I want you next, baby. Let's get it on.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? First things first, there is no other sport on the planet that produces as many excuses for losing as this sport right here does. When you watch NBA games, NFL, baseball games, if a team loses and that team is interviewed afterwards, all you hear is congratulations to the team that won, the team that beat them. You will seldomly hear a football player saying, we lost the Super Bowl because I was dealing with mental health issues. Going into this game, I just wasn't myself. There was a lot of stuff going on. The reason why we lost this game is because I had a lot of stuff that I was dealing with when it comes to my family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying 100% of the time, but 95% of the time, you will mainly hear athletes in other sports congratulate the other team. You will rarely ever hear them trying to take credit away from the other team for beating them. You hear this in boxing more than 90% of the time. And the reason why is because boxing is more of an individual sport. If you lose, you have no one else to blame but yourself. On top of that, it's mano a mano. It's a gladiator sport. So more testosterone is involved. I mean, to acknowledge that another man beat your ass is a hard pill to swallow. And this is one of the reasons why boxing is far more mental than it is physical. Not only do you have to be mentally strong inside of the ring during combat, you also have to be strong mentally outside of the ring, before the fight and after the fight, particularly if you lose. This is the reason why a lot of boxers are usually never the same after they suffer their first loss, regardless if they get knocked out or just get completely dominated, because it will affect you psychologically depending on the fighter. Especially when you've been told for so many years, you're going to be the best. You're going to be sitting on the top of the sport. You're going to be considered pound for pound. You have a lot of family members that have all of these high expectations for you. But then reality hits. You get in the ring with fighters that are better than you. And you have to now accept the fact that you're not the best in the sport that you have dedicated your entire life to. And this is exactly what Danny Garcia is going through right now. This is what he's dealing with. See, when it comes to a fighter like Danny Garcia, Danny was extremely successful, especially as an amateur. He was beating a lot of the big names that we see in the sport today. I believe he even has a win over Terrence Crawford as an amateur. But since he turned pro, once he reached a certain level and he started fighting these top-notch, athletic, black, undefeated welterweights, and once again, he was fighting in the deepest division in the sport, so he was fighting against the best of the best. And unfortunately for Danny Garcia, the same success that he got in the amateurs, he did not get in the pros. And every single time, once again, he stepped up in competition, he would lose. So when he makes excuses for why he lost to Errol Spence, this is something that has been consecutive when it comes to Danny Garcia's career, him losing when he steps up in competition. It's pretty ironic when you think about it. Danny Garcia had already lost to fighters that were not as skilled. They were not as good as Errol Spence. Danny already lost to Sean Porter. He already lost to Keith Thurman. Regardless of how competitive the fights were, he lost to these fighters. And then once he loses to someone even better than them, which is Errol Spence, Danny Garcia's excuse is even more elaborate. You guys know he just beat Jose Benavidez this past weekend. And after that fight, and even leading up to the fight, he started to pull the mental health card. He talked about how he was dealing with depression, anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. It's a real thing. Guys, I think it's gotten to the point to where boxers like Ryan Garcia and now Danny Garcia, they are making a mockery out of mental health. There are people that are really dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD. Fighters like Danny Garcia is just dealing with the heartbreak of letting his fans and his friends down, coming to the reality that he is not the best in the division and there are fighters that are better than him. That's all he's dealing with. There's no doubt about it. Danny Garcia was definitely depressed from losing to Errol Spence, especially after Errol Spence, he just came off of that near-death car accident. And even though PBC and everyone around him tried to push him to take an easier fight, when it comes to his first fight back, Errol Spence refused to do it. Meanwhile, Danny Garcia was an active fighter. So if anything, it was Errol Spence that was going into that fight with more of a disadvantage than Danny Garcia. In fact, Danny Garcia and his father, Angel Garcia, they agree with my assessment right there. They completely corroborate everything I just said when you listen to what they said going into the Errol Spence fight.
And at the end of the day, after we take care of that, and then Danny's got to go in there and do his thing with these two right here, the ones he got. Because he's not going over the handicap. He got two hands like he does. And anything Spence brings to the table, we're going to respond to anything he brings.
Did you guys just hear what Angel Garcia said right there? He said Danny Garcia ain't going into that fight with no handicap. He's not going into that fight handicapped.
That's not new to me. I'm used to playing that role. That's the role they gave me. But, I just have to go in there and be myself. I have to go in there and be Danny Garcia, believe in myself 100%, mentally and physically.
Mentally and physically. This is what Danny Garcia is saying now, going into the Errol Spence fight. So either Danny Garcia is telling us that he knew mentally and physically he could not beat Errol Spence going into that fight, or he's telling us mentally and physically he was 100% prepared, but he just ended up losing to someone that was better than him.
Go in there, fight round by round, make adjustments, and dig deep. And that's what a true champion's made of, and that's what I plan on doing come December 5th. After the Mikey fight and the Porter fight, I saw some holes in his game, and I felt like it's a good opportunity for me to become champion again. So, and he's a great champion. I'm a great champion, and I feel like these type of fights bring out the best in Danny Garcia. They make me run that extra mile. They make me spar that extra round. They make me eat the right meals, and they gave me the extra motivation I need. And I feel like this is the type of fight that's gonna bring out the best in me.
Well, guys, there's no better confirmation to what I'm saying than hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, Danny Garcia. Hell, I didn't even have to do any commentary in this video. I could have had Danny Garcia do all of the commentary, because Danny Garcia, he just admitted in that clip I played that was the best version of him. That was the best version of him going into the Errol Spence fight. Why? Because an opponent like Errol Spence, as Danny Garcia put it, brings the best out of him. But now fast forward to present day. After Danny Garcia gets his win over Jose Benavidez, he's doing interviews saying that he wasn't 50%. In fact, a reporter even asked him if he could elaborate and explain in detail what exactly was wrong with him, when going into the Errol Spence fight. And Danny Garcia actually said in the interview, he said, yeah, I don't know, I just wasn't myself. That was just 50% of me. So he didn't even really have a solid excuse. In fact, after the fight, right after he lost to Errol Spence, Danny didn't use any of these excuses. All Danny Garcia said was Errol Spence's jab was the difference. This is what he said in the post-fight interview right after he lost to Errol Spence. It really trips me out because when Errol Spence and Danny Garcia was sitting right next to each other watching the Gervonta Tank Davis fight, to me it seemed like there was just at least a level of respect to where Danny Garcia wouldn't come out and say something like this. Because even though this is the way Danny deals with losing and it's therapeutic for him to make these excuses, you're still attempting to discount Errol Spence's win. Errol, he actually responded to Danny Garcia making these excuses, and Errol, he made so much sense in the little that he said. I'm gonna go ahead and sum up what he said, but he basically said people are trying to figure out how they're gonna pay their mortgage or rent every month, etc. And then he said nobody cares about some rich nigga being depressed. You ever see some skinny girl who's in real good shape, has a real nice body, and then some person compliments her on her body, and she says, oh, nah, I'm fat. And she's saying this while she's standing right next to some girls that are overweight. This is exactly how Danny Garcia sounds. Like Errol Spence just said, you have people out there with real problems. People losing their jobs and wondering how they're gonna pay the rent. How are they gonna put food on the table because they were living check to check already before they lost the job. Meanwhile, Danny Garcia, he's on his Instagram showing you how rich he is. At the end of the day, if Danny Garcia would have beat Errol Spence, he wouldn't be talking about depression or anxiety at all. This is not some kind of health condition that Danny Garcia has. The majority of fighters, they go through this same type of depression when they take an L. This is the reason why the majority of times when a fighter loses for the first time, it's a while before they come back. Look how long it's taken Teofimo Lopez to return to the ring, and he's returning against a complete unknown soft touch, which is pretty ironic because he said that he actually won the fight against Kambosos and he was robbed and they set him up, etc., etc. But if he truly felt that way, he would have been fighting against much better competition in his return bout. Let's not forget, just like Danny Garcia, Teo made excuses for why he lost to Kambosos, but then he ended up turning down the rematch, which you seldomly see a fighter do when he says or claims that he was actually robbed in the first fight. So my point is, Teofimo, he was suffering the same type of depression, the normal depression that any fighter deals with when they suffer their first loss. We seen Keith Thurman. He admitted that he was really depressed after suffering his loss to Manny Pacquiao, and he disappeared for a while. This is a part of the sport. Danny might have PTSD, but if he does, it was caused by losing to Errol Spence. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo de Key Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodekey.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.
Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com.